Thank you, Aaron, for that great introduction. I don't know what's more impressive, that I gave it to him 5 minutes ago or that I made it up an hour ago. But it's always good to be with friends when you're out traveling around the country, and I will second what Greg said. You guys do such a hell of a program here. Such a hell of a, I know primarily attributable to this guy, but he has a team. And congratulations on what you're doing here. It's also risky. It's a double-edged sword sometimes when you're with friends, and Steve and I have known each other a long time, and Steve looked at me right before I came up on stage. He came up to me and said, "Randy, listen to me. Don't worry about being witty, sincere, and inspirational. Just be yourself." So I'm not sure what he meant by that. But I love the theme. We're in this together. What a great theme. We're in this together. We're in this together as NAIFA members, contributing IFA PAC members. We're in this together defending our industry. NAIFA helps us stay in business on a daily basis. We're in this together as MDRT members, helping you grow your business. And of course, we're all in this together as an industry against our competition. Is everyone clear on who our competitors are? Is everyone clear on who our competition is? It's dying too soon, living too long, or becoming sick or disabled. That's our competition. Dying too soon, living too long, or becoming sick or disabled. And our job is to get there before the competition does. That's our job. And we're in it together in another way. I wanted to share something with you. For all the kids that grew up in the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, and anyone grow up in the 40s? Is John Dean still in the room? Sorry, John, not sure where you are. But people that grew up in particularly the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you might appreciate this a little bit. First, we survived being born to mothers who smoked and drank while they carried us. They took aspirin, ate blue cheese dressing, tuna from a can, and they didn't get tested for diabetes. Then, after that trauma, our baby cribs were covered with bright-colored lead-based paints. We had no child-proof lids on medicine bottles, doors, or cabinets, and when we rode our bikes, we had no helmets, not to mention the risk we took hitchhiking. As children, we would ride in cars with no seat belts or airbags. Riding in the back of a pickup on a warm day was always a special treat. We drank water from the garden hose, not from a bottle. We shared one soft drink with 4 friends from one bottle, and no one actually died from this. We ate cupcakes, white bread, real butter, drank soda pop that had sugar in it, and we weren't overweight. Why? Because we were outside playing all the time. We'd leave home in the morning, play all day, as long as we were back when the street lights came on. No one was able to reach us all day, and we were okay. We spend hours building our go-karts out of scraps and then ride down the hill, only to find out we forgot about the brakes. After running into the bushes a few times, we learned to solve the problem. We didn't have PlayStations, Nintendos, Xboxes, no video games, no 99 channels on cable, videotape movies, surround sound, Lord knows cell phones, personal computers, internet, or internet chat rooms. Why? Because we had friends and we went outside and we found them. We fell out of trees, got cut, broke bones and teeth, and there were no lawsuits from these accidents. We ate worms and mud pies made from dirt, and the worms did not live in us forever. We were given BB guns for our 10th birthdays, made up games with sticks and tennis balls, and although we were told it would happen, we did not put out very many eyes. We rode bikes or walked to a friend's house and knocked on the door, rang the bell, or Lord forbid, we just walked in and talked to them. Little League had tryouts, and guess what? Not everyone made the team. Those who didn't had to learn to deal with disappointment. Imagine that. The idea of a parent bailing us out if we broke the law was unheard of. They actually sided with the law. This generation several generations has produced some of the best risk takers, problem solvers, and inventors ever. The past 50 years has been an explosion of innovation and new ideas. We had freedom, failure, success, and responsibility, and we learned how to deal with it all, and you are all part of those generations, and congratulations. Kind of makes you want to run around the house carrying scissors, doesn't it? I want to share with you, and warning up front, some of my stuff is very basic. Hopefully it will either remind some of the old timers in the room of things that you were doing and you stopped, or there might be some new things for you to hear. But I want to select one, I want to pick on one group of the audience and ask you to stand, please. Who has been in the business for 5 years or less? Would you please stand? 5 years or less. Congratulations. Who thinks the next 10 years in this business is going to be one of the most challenging 10 years we've ever had? Who thinks the next 10 years is going to have some of the greatest opportunities we've ever had? Yeah, they normally go hand in hand. Challenges and opportunities. Regulatory pressures, all the other things, competitive products, changing products. When I came into business 35 years ago, the stuff didn't even exist that we sell today. That's a cliche now because it's so old to say something like that. But you people that are in the business for less than 5 years, and as Mary noted earlier, it's so nice to see the ladies as well. It's so nice to see that occurring when you go to NAIFA meetings and MDRT meetings. Congratulations, you're coming in at a great time. The things I will share with you have helped me to both survive in the business and then eventually thrive in the business and become a sustaining top-of-the-table member. I think it's so neat what Steve does, where he has you write down one concept after every speaker. I'm a strong proponent of that as well, and I'm going to do a little twist on that. And Steve, I think, actually spoke to this. The biggest challenge in our business, and sometimes the biggest challenge when attending a two-day event like this, is our IQ. You know what I mean by IQ? Our implementation quotient. Our implementation quotient. And what I suggest, and a little take on Steve, but write down when you leave this meeting the best 3 things that you took from this meeting. And now here's the trick. What are you going to do next week to make it happen? What are you going to do next week to make it happen? Don't write down some grandiose thing that you heard that's working for someone else and not make the commitment. And it will be that first step that you might take next week. One of your goals might be to work with accountants, as Larry spoke about, and try to discover some of those opportunities on 1040s. Work with accountants, but if you have no existing relationships with accountants, you got to do something next week. It might be to make 5 lunch appointments with accountants that you know, but you don't necessarily have strong relationships. That's a trite example maybe, but it's an example all the same. So take those concepts and translate them to action. There are 3 basic themes of everything that I've learned in this business, which, by the way, everything I've learned in this business is by attending NAIFA annual meetings or MDRT meetings, and or the local equivalent like this. I didn't mean to diss our local events, but it's collaboration with other members in the industry. Collaboration with other people in the industry, and as Greg said and John Savage said, who you're going to hang out with. We are the company we keep. And not necessarily talking about that company on Madison Avenue. Collaboration, specialization, and reflection. Collaboration with staff and other professionals. Staff and other professionals. I'll get more into these subjects. Specialization, either of products, markets, or both. And reflection. Reflection on a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis is how we need to do things, and at least what has worked well for me. Keep it simple. Here comes some of the basic stuff. Everyone knows what KISS means, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple. It is one of our biggest challenges in the profession, particularly as products get more complicated and we become more knowledgeable. It becomes more and more challenging to really practice our art, and that is to present complex products in a simplistic way. And I'm not implying that you do things contrary to compliance, certainly. We can do things consistent with compliance, but we have to do things compliant with what the client needs, and that is helping them make the best decisions to solve their problems. That's when we're really being compliant. Working within compliance to help decisions, to help clients make the right decisions, but doing it in the right way. Always offer at least 3 choices. I'll try to give attribution to people I've learned things from. I learned this from Bert Meisel years ago. Many of us have heard of it as good, better, and best. I tell you, it works, folks. If you got away from it, get back to it. Good, better, best. Always give 3 choices to people any one of which would solve their problem in a different way. You know, the classic model, of course, is term insurance, permanent insurance on the right, some type of blend product in the middle. But give people room to be part of the decision to collaborate with you, any one of which would solve their problem. Focus on benefits, not features. If death benefits are tax-free, don't talk about them as tax-free death benefits. But you can tell how much international speaking I do when I have if they're tax-free. Some countries they aren't. But identify the death benefit as being the only asset that will not shrink upon your death. Frame it up that way. If you're selling living benefits with a guarantee with variable annuities, living benefits, income benefits, don't describe it as just income benefits or lifetime income. Say you will be able to engage in market risk without passing that risk on to your lifetime income, or some other better ways of that, which reminds me to make the point, you have to internalize it. You have to internalize it and make it your own. And you also need your own persuasion phrases. You can tell how politically correct. I'm working hard at being politically correct. Believe me, my friends that know me well, I'm working hard at it. But we used to call these closing phrases and power phrases. But one of the best ones that I ever got was from Bob Plyben, a past MDRT president, and it's simply, does that make sense to you? After you've made your presentation, after you've made your recommendations, you've been compliant, often there's a little spot there where you have to bring it to closure, and this is something that might help you younger folks in the business. You need a phrase to tie together, and the one that I always use is, does that make sense to you? And if anyone has ever said anything other than, why, yes, it does, I don't remember it. But communication. Become a communicator first, and the salesmanship will follow. How many Lilly graduates do we have in the room? Another great NAIFA program. Congratulations. Is your Lilly program going on again now, or do you have a new class? Wonderful. Get into Lilly, folks. I'm going to do some advertisements up here, but I've moderated. I've been a student first, of course, and I moderated. But one of the best things to come out of Lilly is spending time with Steve Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's one of the most impactful books I've ever read. It would be more enjoyable as part of a Lilly class to you, more meaningful. But if you can't be part of a Lilly class, read that book. It starts out a little slow. It's hard to get into. Stick with it. But Steve Covey's 7 Habits, number 5 is the most powerful to me, and that is seek first to understand and then be understood. That is the essence of communicating. That is the essence of salesmanship, of consultative selling. Seek first to understand and then be understood. We can all learn an awful lot from that as salespeople. And I'm so glad you have an active Lilly class. The only client story I'll share is now getting to be probably over 25 years old, but that's what makes it important, because I was early in my career, and I was working with a judge in the D.C. area, Judge Gordon, and being young, we'd get together at lunch, and I'd be presenting some new proposal to him. And, of course, I had the obligation to explain it and go through every page of the ledgers that we had, and I just couldn't explain it enough. And he would stop me and say, Randy, he said, you're my doctor. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. And that is a sacred trust for you young people in the business. That is something that is so sweet when it's earned, but as with any trust, you have to honor it. You have to honor it. You would never break that trust, but it's one of the neat aspects of being in this business, to be told, you're my doctor, just tell me what to do. Always be marketing, at least 3 activities at a time. And for folks at any level in the business, I'd remind you to get back to this. Get back to this. Always have 3, not 5, not 6, not 1, 3 different types of marketing, whatever might be appropriate for you. At one time, when I started out in the business, we did 30 to 40 phone calls every morning. We did mailers that we'd mail out in the U.S. mail, and I would go hit parking lots with term rate, things that we'd put on windshields. And that's how I got started. Or we'd put them on doorknobs at apartment buildings and things like that. But the important thing is not what I was doing, but the concept of having 3 activities. I certainly do different things now, but to have 3 constant marketing activities going on, and I'll talk later about the importance of sticking to them. Sticking to them. Becoming a specialist. This is one of the favorite subjects of mine. Invariably, when we've done surveys for top-of-the-table members, it has come back that the number one reason, the prime reason people become members of Top of the Table, if that's important to you, if that's something you want to do, the number one reason is specialization, either in products, markets, or both. When we all start out in the business, we have everything that's available. And it's important to start out this way. A lot of products, a lot of services. And who's an eligible prospect for us? What do we used to say? If they could fog a mirror, right? They were eligible. And that's legitimate when you start out. That's legitimate. But you need to, I started to stop myself from saying need. I will, and I'll say I highly recommend you consider narrowing in one of those areas. Narrowing your products and services and narrowing who you will work with. And there's different ways to do this. Another way is narrowing your product where you have many prospects. Steve Plewis talked about this earlier that we worked together on long-term care. I realized, I think it's about 15 years ago now, that I wasn't doing a good job for my clients with long-term care. I was writing it for folks, but the products were getting more complicated, more complex, more laws, and I wasn't doing a good job for the clients. So I started working with someone, that's all he does. And he does it for just about everyone. But that's all he does, long-term care. And as Steve said, when I started selling more long-term care insurance was when I stopped selling long-term care insurance. And I started working, collaborating with another individual who specializes in that. Now some people, and you'll meet some of these people at the top of the table, but some folks have a very narrow product line for a very narrow client prospect candidate, very narrow. You know, only 65 and older with a net worth of $5 million plus and whatever, fill in all the blanks. You know, as you can tell with my rambling, I'm not into that necessarily myself, but and my specialty is more of a conceptual one, retirement planning. But one of the first things that happen, there's several things that happens, but one of the first things that happens when you do your specialty properly is that you know what to say no to then. You know what to say no to on what periodicals come through, what emails to open, what to deal with. You get great mental clarity, which brings you greater peace of mind. And I'll digress on this a little bit deeper. If you think you have a specialty in this room, if you think you're really specializing, take a look at your website, your marketing materials, things like that. You really need someone else to do this rather than you for yourself. And if your materials do not turn some people off, they're not going to turn the right people on. Think about what I'm saying for a minute. Some people should be looking at your stuff saying, well, he's not the right person for me. I don't think she would be the right person for what I'm looking for. And that should give you peace because you're now focusing on who you really want. There's some speakers on the circuit out there. Jim Ruda does a great job of this, where we used to put our brochures together, our trifold brochures, and it says we offer all these services: life insurance, estate planning, disability insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, variable annuities, investments. And then at the bottom it has the 5 dots and it says, and more. Really? Would you go to a doctor that listed everything like that? So I've perhaps covered that too much, but take a look at specialization. Take a look. Investing in your business. Steve Plewis mentioned Dan Sullivan. He was working with Dan Sullivan as a coach, was very instrumental to me. And one of the first things he taught me was that staff is not an expense, it's an investment. Staff is not an expense, it is an investment. Wednesday before I came here, I had a bunch of job interviews to hire my 5th employee. I had 5 employees back in 2001. With technology, we were able to get a little more efficient, but now we're expanding again and hiring my 5th staff person. Every time I've hired a staff person, my revenue has grown, and the quality of my life has gotten better. Hire staff people. And a couple other comments on that. When you hire, test your candidates. Use a personality test, work style test, be it Colby, Myers-Briggs. There are many other good ones out there. When we hire people, and this is one of our great challenges, I'll talk about this more later, but everyone in this room is a very good salesperson. But when they have to step over to be a business person, sometimes you're out of your comfort zone. So we have to create ways, either use the tools to help us and or reset our frame of mind in certain ways to help you be a business person. Because if you can be a business person for a couple hours a week, it'll allow you to be a much better salesperson the other hours of the week and much better off person when you are off. Know yourself, your staff, and your clients. I spoke to using the personality test. Using a coach helps you in that, and you have to get outside help. Who's part of a study group? Part of a study group? Great way to get feedback. Great way to get feedback business-wise. Of course, we can give hour-long talks on study groups, but how it can be a great social thing as well. But great place to get feedback. Know yourself, your staff, and your clients. Knowing your clients, the best thing I ever heard on that was from Bill Bacharach, and he has 3 categories of clients that he talks about. Do-it-yourselfers, collaborators, and delegators. Do-it-yourselfers, collaborators, or delegators. I just want to work with delegators. I don't want anything to do with do-it-yourselfers. I don't waste any time with them. The important thing is to identify them up front. I will work with collaborators sometimes because they're recovering do-it-yourselfers. Really, particularly as they get along in life, they're recovering do-it-yourselfers. They're saying, I really don't want to mess with this anymore. But my ideal is the delegators. And I really should make up this ad that I saw a long time ago, and so I could use it, but I haven't seen it since. But there was an ad in a magazine where there's a classic rich folks sitting on a yacht, and the top of the page it said, how do rich people manage their money? And on the bottom it said, they don't. They don't. They handle it like everything else in their life. They delegate it. Another story on this, I was in California golfing last year, and I got paired up with a colon rectal surgeon who was retiring. And he told me him and his wife were thinking about just taking their own portfolio away from their broker and doing it in retirement. I said, that's really interesting, because I've never heard of an investment person retiring and thinking about taking up colorectal surgery. Really. But it do happen out there. It do happen. Be goal-oriented, the power of 3. You'll find out I like to deal with a lot of things in 3s. 3 M's, 3 P's, 3 whatever, but the power of 3. But being goal-oriented, and here's another tool for you. A process to develop your goals. And one of the main principles that this speaks to is our self-confidence. As salespeople, one of the most important things we have to protect is our self-confidence. And there's some importance in these steps that I'm about to go through here. Whether you're doing it now, whether you do it as part of your year-end planning, whatever. But I highly recommend this process. I should say it works well for me. First thing you do when you're reflecting on a year is, what's the best thing that happened in your business last year? So we're doing the positive framework. What's the best thing that happened last year? Then bring it up a little closer, bring it up more specific. What's the best thing that happened in the last 90 days? You know, the best thing that happened last year might have been you started really working well with attorneys. And then the last 90 days might be that one big case that you got with the guy that you've worked with for 5 or 6 years. So you're framing yourself positively first. And then, now look forward after you've looked past in a positive sense. Look forward, what's the 3 most important business goals for this year? 3 most important business goals. Not 10, but not just 1 either. For me, my goals often are to make top of the table. I have that as a goal every year, SMART goal, defined, measurable, to make top of the table, and then other goals are revenue goal and assets under management for the type of business I have. And then you'll see number 4, I'm speaking to IQ again. What are you going to do next week to achieve one of these goals if it's something new? What are you going to do next week? We always have to convert the abstract and the concept to the action. The main system that I used to survive in this business, and I use to this day, is what I call my 3 M's. And again, this is that part of the salesperson having to step over and think like a business person at least once a week. And it might be important to only do it once a week and to be at it through the week trying to be a salesperson. I came out of the restaurant business and I didn't have the same measurables in this business as I had in mine. And also, given that I came into business in the 80s, you know what the training program was, right? Go get them, Tiger. Go get them. So I had to develop my own system. And I built a system, and of course it was, you know, it was for me, but it was based on things that were tried and tested in the business. And the 3 M's are to measure weekly activity, monitor monthly production, and manage quarterly. So what do we do? Weekly, only on a weekly basis, all I measure is activity. Define it whatever way you're doing it. Calls make, appointments, outreaches, visits with centers of influence. I don't think about production, because why? We can't control that. Don't control the results. We only control the effort, the activity. I'm reading a new book on John Wooden, and he was one of the epitomes of that, the famous UCLA coach. And I could digress on that, and I'll refrain from doing so. But anyways, he focused on activity. We need to focus on activity on a weekly basis. Then once a month, we're not naive, we're in business. Once a month, look back on your production. See what you've accomplished, different business lines. You can't be naive about it, but don't get hung up if you're not getting results on a week-to-week basis. Make sure you're getting results on a month-to-month basis. Here comes the most challenging part for many of us. Only manage on a quarterly basis. Only manage. We all have short attention spans, and as salespeople, we will try a new marketing plan started on Monday, and by the time Thursday comes around, we're tired of it and we're not ready to do it anymore. You have to give things a chance to work. And I would suggest reconsidering your strategy on a weekly or monthly basis is just as bad as never having a strategy at all. You need to give things a chance to work. So weekly, we're monitoring what we do. Monthly, we monitor what we accomplish. And then quarterly, we talk about why we're doing what we're doing. And ideally, that's done with a third party, be it a coach, manager, spouse, study group. Ideally, it's done with a third party. And I could speak a lot about the value of coaches in the business. They are very valuable because particularly if they're not in the business. Even if you have a very good mentor and manager, to have a business coach that's not in the business can be very powerful, get that outside perspective. And they will ask you questions that you would not ask of yourself. And it's not about giving you answers. It's about telling you what questions to ask of yourself. Remain or become, for some of the younger folks, remain or become a contributor to your industry, organizations, and your community. I'm definitely preaching to the choir here. One of my favorite philosophers is Bob Dylan. And in one of his songs, he said, everybody must give something back, something they get. And in the witness of Steve Hammer and his son now, Aaron, and people that have gotten from this business, they continue to give back. And it's unfortunate I mentioned those two names because I know we have a room full of Steve and Aaron Hammers. Steve that's been doing it for decades. Aaron will do it for decades. We have a room full of people like that. That's what makes you special. That's what makes this industry special. Continue to give back. Be a part of your local and your national. Get involved. Always be a part of something bigger than you. And personally, I've always had a budget of time for both industry work and community work. And I've never regretted it. And indeed, it will come back to you as long as you go in there not expecting anything in return. Not expecting anything in return. And if you do, again, I have to say to this group of folks, I don't think, but if you do go in expecting something in return, I can promise you you'll be disappointed. But you go in expecting nothing, and you will not. We all get off track sometimes. We have to find our North Star or rediscover it. And a North Star I have for this business is one named John Todd. And He was an MDRT president. He was a member for over 60 years. Anyone in the room knows who John Todd was? Very good, very good. He sort of invented the first deferred comp plan for GE, and very, very innovative guy. But he wrote something that is sort of a list, but he wrote something that's called Why I Do What I Do, and it speaks to our industry, and I'd like to share it with you. Why I do what I do. We've never experienced any shortage of materials. There's no labor problem that I cannot cure myself. I'd love to create by the stroke of a pen something that was not there yesterday and is here today. I like people to trust me. I like to have people tell me about themselves. I like the kind of people with whom I am associated. They would be leaders anywhere. People like the folks in this room. I like to pick the people with whom I want to do business. Well, I'm grateful for that one a lot sometimes. I like knowing that no one has to die or retire in order for me to make progress. I like knowing my boss won't be mad if I earn more money than he or she does. I like working in a business where the sky is the limit. I like knowing that if I make $1, my clients make many more. I like the security which comes from my skill in selling, which no one can take from me, and my renewal account. I get a thrill out of influencing people's minds to sound conclusions for their own benefit. And I like my independence. I like my independence. Don't we have great independence in this great business? What's really interesting is that John made those comments at the 1948 roundtable meeting. 1948. Things really haven't changed, even though the products have. And he also went on to talk in that same talk about how even though information will be available on drugs and medicines, there will always be a need for doctors. There will always be a need for proper diagnosis and prescription. I don't care how much knowledge and information is out there, there will always be a need for the wisdom of a professional in our business. So things haven't changed in that regard as well. There will always be a place, those of you that are in the business for 5 years or less, there will always be a place for us in this business. I look to John in his words for passion in the business. I recently looked to something else for perspective on life, and some of you may have heard of it, but it speaks of the dash on a tombstone. We have a birth year and a year of death, and we have a dash, and someone put pen to paper in talking about that dash, and I'd like to share that with you. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates of her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years, for that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel. Be less quick to anger and show appreciation more. And love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? I'd like to ask you to indulge me a little bit to make it more personal on your dash. And apologies in advance if it hits a little too close to home for folks, but I hope you find it a meaningful exercise. Get comfortable if you would. I'd ask you to put both your feet on the floor. And close your eyes. We're talking about our dash. All of us here are still in our dash. Close your eyes and think for a moment, if you will, that you only have 6 months to live. You have your capacities, but you only have 6 months to live. You have your health. You're not destitute. You have resources, but you only have 6 months to live. How are you spending your time? Who are you with? What are you doing? How are you spending your time? Now let me ask you this. Why aren't you doing that now? Why aren't you doing that now in your lives? Hopefully some of you are. You're doing exactly what you envisioned. This business gives us the opportunity to not only help other people have more meaningful dashes, but we can have a very meaningful one as well. I'm very honored to be a part of your dash today. Thank you for having me.